Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of Make Every Second Count Live with me, your host and international award-winning Make Every Second Count speaker. Now, this is a show where we try to help you deal with whatever you are dealing with because we tell you how other people dealt with their issues. And I am very honored tonight to be joined by an Air Force veteran that has had a very challenging day. Her daughter is sick and her day has just gotten away from her. And I really hope her daughter is okay. But with no further ado, I would like to bring up Meghann. Hey, Meghann. Oh, you have your daughter with you.
Yeah, she just decided to wake up right when we were starting, so
Well,
she's here.
that's fine.
You don't
So,
mind?
if you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself, I'll let you go ahead and do that. Tell everybody who you are, where you're from, what you do, and more importantly, why you do what you do.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for having me, Jeff. I'm honored to be here. Again, motherhood is new. We're a month into it. Adjustments, right? I've been solo for a long time, but she's doing a little bit better. So, yeah, my name is Meghann Trapp. I'm an Air Force veteran, firefighter, and medic. I was in the military for 10 years, but I was firefighter for 14, so civilian and military combined.
14?
Lived all over the world, done some really cool things. Um, sorry. I had a feeling she might do this because she has been chill all day. And then, like, the minute I want to get on camera, she's like, I need your attention.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, so the path that I found myself in here and out of the military, I was assaulted on my last deployment in 2016. My career was destroyed over it. And, I had to find a new norm. I had to find a way through all that chaos and um, depression and PTSD and, having my career kind of ripped out from underneath me, to finding a new passion and being able to impact other people's lives. I myself was a veteran that I almost ended my life over the stuff that I went through because it was heartbreaking. It was, people, um, the stuff that happened to me was everything that should not happen to an assault survivor. But unfortunately, I had really toxic leadership. And yeah, I didn't have a choice in any of that. And I finally got to a point where I was like, if I don't do something, I'm not gonna make it, So I have the choice to either take control of my life and figure out what, that means for me, or sit here and die slowly.
Well, that's never a good option.
No, no, absolutely not.
No.
Which I said gives me the passion to why I speak out now. I speak out about assault, sexual assault in the military, mental health. I go and speak on bases. I do these interviews with, other people like you and myself that, want to make a difference in people's lives and give them the tools to take back control of going through things that change us, but that maybe we don't have control over, but being able to come out, a different person and not letting those emotions and those hardships in life control who we are and who we're going to be.
Yeah. So, all right. So, if you want to go ahead and, I guess, explain the story a little bit more in depth.
Sure.
So we can understand it a little bit better. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you want me just to share like more about my assault and then how I got to like where I'm at now and starting my business, or
Yeah, sure. That
all of
works.
it? Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I was, I mean, military has its ups and downs. Military life is tough. You deal with a lot of stress, right? But you get used to it. And I really, for the most part, thrived in the military. I loved what I did. I was passionate about it, but I was really good at my job. I loved being a firefighter. I was stationed in Italy, traveled all over the world, got to do, so many cool things and meet so many cool people. And I was literally the only female in my department. It was military firefighter of the year. Had numerous achievement medals, numerous awards. Just
That's badass.
high kick. Yeah, I mean, I loved it. It was like living the dream. And one minute I'm doing all that stuff, and then I deployed to Kuwait, and unfortunately I was assaulted by a fellow NCO. The guy, he came back to the States before he was in a rotation before us, so he left early while they did the investigation, and his command 100% protected him from being charged with sexual assault. And it was a joke. It was like a slap in the face to every assault victim, and the fact that they, cram it into your head from day one in the military, like sexual assault is a zero tolerance policy, and yet that's what happened, and they swept it under the rug. And then to come home, not only to come home from a deployment where you're trying to reintegrate back to a deployment in itself is stressful, and it's hard to go from being in that environment back to civilian life. So to come home from a deployment where all this stuff had happened, I mean, I was NCOIC of the logistics department for the fire department, which means I was an E5, I was a staff sergeant in charge of the entire logistics for our whole fire department. I reported to fire chief. So I had a really stressful job. And I had, I had that job, plus I had the 911 dispatch operations center, was all those people I was in charge of. So two very stressful jobs combined into one. I was going into staff meetings with guys that I was the lowest ranking, like it was tough, but, so dealing with that, and then dealing with my assault, and I had a torn rotator cuff. I mean, it was just like everything. So coming back to the US with all that stuff after 6 months, that in itself was challenging. And then to have my case just basically, they didn't, they charged him with physical assault and adultery. They refused to charge him with sexual assault. So he was protected and got to stay in the Air Force. I had shoulder surgery. I was a mess. I had so much anger, so much rage. I was not doing well. And eventually it started taking a toll on me because I was commuting from Denver to Cheyenne. I'm from Colorado. My unit at the time was in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and they were forcing me to commute. And I finally went to them and was like, listen, I'm not doing well. Like, I'm having a really hard time with everything. I'm going to therapy for my mental health. I was ordered to go for my assault. Plus I'm in physical therapy for my shoulder. I mean, I just bought a house, like I'm commuting, I'm never home, and I need your guys' help with this. I want to finish my orders up at Buckley, which was an active duty base in Colorado. It was 20 miles from my house, or 25 miles from my house. They refused. They were like, nope, this is your wing, this is your unit, you're going to come here. And it was at that moment when I went, wow, these people don't give a crap about my well-being. I mean, here I have given my entire life to the Air Force between active duty and guard units, and never hesitated to question anything, any kind of deployment, any kind of, TDY, anything. Was like, you're going to go do this. Okay. And I did it. It was like, they said jump and I said, how high? So to give my life, and I loved giving, it was part of the reason I served, right? I loved serving. I loved what I did, but to give that kind of loyalty and that kind of nothing, there were no boundaries. And then to have that slap in the face from them, like, hey, basically to me, it was like, you don't matter to us. And all that crap that we tell you about, we care about our troops and we care about our, people's well-being and their mental health. And it was like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And so that was really when it kind of all started going downhill. Because after that, once I started seeing things for what they really were, they were on a mission to get rid of me. They took it upon themselves. Once I had that diagnosis of PTSD, MST, which is military sexual trauma, they took it upon themselves to make themselves judge, executor. And, they weren't even mental health providers. And yet here they were trying to strong arm my own psychologist when I was deemed fit for duty. They were like, nope, we're going to med board you out, which a med board is where you go in front of a medical evaluation board to determine your eligibility in the military. And it was like, you're not a mental health provider. You're a med group person, or you're my whoever. Like, who are you? And that's unfortunately, that's pretty common. And so that was it. It was the fight of my life. I mean, I stood up to them every chance I got. And I'm talking, this went all the way up my entire chain of command, all the way up to my wing commander, who was a full-bird colonel. And it just, the more that I stood up for myself, the harder they fought back, because it was toxic leadership. You know,
Yeah.
it was about power. It was about, you know, how dare you stand up to me? And instead of great, you know, because I've had great leaders. Everyone's had some type of mentor or leader in their life where they look at that person and they say, wow, that person is somebody who I emulate to be. That person sets a great example of leadership, because they're not just walking around ordering people to do stuff, regardless of what scenario you meet them in, you know, whether it's military or a regular job, or, you know, any kind of a mentor to get into, you know, the stuff that we do as an entrepreneur. Like, somebody that has those characteristics is somebody you're like, I'm going to follow and listen to what that person says, because that person cares, but they're also setting the standard. And that's how it should be with leadership, especially in the military. And yet those people did nothing they didn't ever once ask me, how are you doing? I mean, they didn't know that I was pretty much near suicidal.
Yeah.
And it was just like, hey, you're used up government garbage to us. Bye. I mean, not, and mind you, in 10 years, I had nothing on my record, not even a verbal counseling ever from being in trouble or having, it wasn't, you know, and that's what they made me out to be. It was like, oh, she's emotionally unstable. She's a piece of crap firefighter and a trashy NCO. And it was like, what? You know? And it was heartbreaking. I mean, the betrayal from them was almost worse than my actual assault. Yeah. To come home and, you know, again, to be a female firefighter, you have to be super tough. You have to be not only physically tough, but you have to be very,
no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to take anything and everything, because, you know, it's a tough field. I mean, it's worth it. It's great. It's something that when I found it, it was like, this is who I was meant to be for my whole life, right? It was like, it clicked. And luckily, because I'm really physically strong and physically fit, it just made sense all the way around. But, you know, a lot of the times I had to put on that tough exterior going into work and going into the job, because I couldn't let those guys see like the true me, the sensitive side, because I'm like, they're going to eat me alive, you know? And, so I became that person eventually over time. I just became really rough around the edges, and then the assault like made it that much more. And I think a lot of the guys I served with, it was like, I don't think they even knew how to help me, because it was like, they knew that I could handle myself. And then here they see me going through this life altering experience. And, you know, I didn't even know how to help myself. So it was
that's a shame that nobody would stand up to the higher power, the powers of being in the military, and that's just a shame that they would do that. And I noticed something. You said you had toxic leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that there are a lot of workplaces now that people say are toxic environments, and they still work there.
Right.
How should you how would you suggest someone deals with a situation of toxic leadership or toxic work environment?
Well, luckily, because I, you know, after this whole thing, I became a coach, right? I became NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. I'm certified in hypnosis, and I have all these amazing tools now of how to approach things in a different manner. I mean, back then, of course, I was triggered by everything, so I'm sure my approach didn't help. I would still handle it the same. Like, I would still absolutely, you know, I'm a very outspoken person. I've always kind of been that way, where I see something that I don't agree with, I'm going to say something. But saying it in a way that is neutral, you know, so getting your point across and still having, you know, you don't have to come in guns blazing, right? Like, I think a lot of people, like I said, back at that time, I was so traumatized and so in my own, you know, situation because of my assault, that I didn't really have that ability to have that neutral ground, which I'm sure did not help. It kind of made the situation more hostile. But my recommendation to anybody dealing with something that's, you know, the worst thing I think that people can do is be a bystander, which means not intervening, right? And I've always felt that way, regardless, because I'm like, if this was my troop, if this was my friend, if this was anyone that I saw struggling or going through that, I would totally stand up for them, or I would be going up to them and saying, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? That's the biggest thing, mental health, because there are people everywhere, all over the world, dealing with stuff we have no idea what they're going through, right? And people are good at hiding stuff because of situations like this, because they're afraid of retaliation. They're afraid of how, people portray them. They label them crazy, or, just the ridiculous stigma that mental health has. So that's number one. Number two, leadership, coming to them and asking them, like, is this serving a purpose? Like, what is the purpose of handling it X, like handling it this way, or treating the scenario like this? What if, using kind of like negotiation techniques, right? But in a way that makes sense. Like, why not try this way and handling, why not try this situation, and let's see if that would be a more loving, coming from, like I said, that neutral place, and not like, this is wrong, you're terrible for doing this, taking the blame out of it, taking the sides, because it's not about sides. It's about, what's the purpose? So if you're a regular workplace, we know, like, okay, what's the mission of the company? What's the motto? Or what's the point? Like, what exactly is your job? What role do you play? And how can we get that job done, but still providing a healthy environment for our coworkers and for our employees, including leadership? So that's probably the best advice that I would give, because you want to, like I said, it comes back to, obviously, when people are triggered, right? Again, we have no idea what they're going on in their life. So is leadership doing that because of their own personal experience? Are they doing it because maybe they had another coworker that had done something where it didn't turn out well, and they're just reacting, kind of knee jerk, like, oh, well, I'm going to handle this way because I've already been through this with another employee that did this, right? So we don't know. So, being able to kind of keep it neutral between parties, and saying, like, how can we keep this healthy, this environment of our workplace? We want people to come here and enjoy their job. We want people to come in and, being able to, even if, they're not friends, or they're not super friendly at work, like, everyone doesn't have to be friends, but at least keeping it, peaceful, and keeping it a place where people don't have to dread coming into work every day, where it's like, oh, what am I going to have to put up with? Right?
Yeah. That's something that is, I think, can be the change in workplaces. Say you work in a toxic environment, or you say it's toxic. Do you believe that it's possibly that person that's toxic? Or
Oh
do
yeah. I
you
mean, I don't.
believe it's a situation?
Yeah, and absolutely. Like, when I tell, when I speak out a lot, right? I share my story a lot. I go to military bases now and share it, because I want to make that impact and make sure that we're changing our sexual assault programs in the military, and our mental health. Those are the top two most important things within military and veterans. I mean, huge issues. And there's a reason why we keep seeing those top two things, because there's no change. They're like, making these programs, and it's like, well, and how effective is it going to be if people are really not taking it to heart? It's just like, oh, here's another sexual assault case, or here's another person that committed suicide. Okay, well, how do we change it? So, going in and being able to, for me, when I go in and I share my story, like I said, right, I don't say, oh, the entire Air Force is to blame, because it's not. There are some amazing people. Like I said, one of my very first commanders in Italy was phenomenal leader, a great colonel.
My cousin is in the Air Force, so don't say anything too bad.
Right. No, and that's the thing. Like, my overall experience with the Air Force was great, right? I don't blame. When I go in and share my story, I'm very specific. I'm like, I'm not like, oh, the Air Force is at fault for this, because it's not the Air Force. It is those people in those positions, those certain people that chose to behave that way, right?
Yeah.
And I still have to say, okay, like, what is it within them that they chose to do what they did? You have to be able to separate the behavior and the person. And it's gotten easier. Again, it was like I was holding so much hate and anger. It was not serving a purpose. It was like, I'm not living. I mean, these people are not even in my life anymore, and they're controlling my life.
Yeah.
So I need to let go of that. And no matter what happens with them, whether they're ever held accountable for what they did or not, I have to be able to move forward with my life. And
Yeah.
so those people are at fault. Those people have to own their part in that role and they played in my story or my chapter or that situation. But yeah, I don't blame the overall scenario, like, oh, the Air Force did this. And, there are some amazing people that I've served with. And just like civilian world, there's amazing people everywhere. And then there's people that also, may not be living up to their best potential. They're choosing to do things and behave in ways that don't align with me.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Now, let's say what's the best way for someone to let go of that anger, to let go of whatever is holding them back?
Well, I will tell you, it was not easy. When you to let go of that kind of stuff, especially for me, because my biggest negative emotion for me to release was the hardest one was anger. And that's because anger is like the kind of top layer of negative emotions that hide all that, not hide, but like it comes first. I mean,
Yeah.
so becoming a coach and becoming NLP certified, neuro-linguistic programming, we use timeline therapy through hypnosis. And it changed my life. Like I said, I was triggered. I had so much rage, anger, hate because I had been hurt so much. And that it's interesting because that's the way it goes. It goes anger, hurt, sadness, fear, and guilt. While I had been hurt so much that that's what my emotion was showing up was anger. The anger was there. And through through this training that I went through to be able to do what I do now, because that's what I do as a coach. I coach my clients using hypnosis, timeline therapy, and all the other tools that I learned for them to go um, and release those events. So you're not reliving them. You're not like, because people are like, oh, I don't want to. You don't sit around and talk about the event. You go through hypnosis, and we go back to that event, and there's a takeaway. So for me, that's how I released it. I was able to um, have a different. It created a new perspective for me. It created a new, not a new timeline. That's not the right word, but basically the new takeaway. Like, okay, again, I had to get to that point where it was like, I can either sit here and let this control my life, and pretty soon I'm not gonna make it. I was even in denial about how bad I was because I was like, well, I'm not actively planning my suicide, but I was a mess, and I couldn't even own. And it takes getting so brutally honest with yourself to have any kind of growth in life or any kind of progression. I cannot tell you how hard it is, and that's why so many people struggle with it. It is hard to let go of that and to change effectively, right? Because we create patterns and habits on the unconscious level. So that's what the hypnosis helps with. We go in through the unconscious mind, we release those major negative emotions and events tied to that, and we clean it up, and then we it's called eliciting new positive emotions and basically change your takeaway. Like, okay, yeah, that happened, but I can't control that. And I can't control that person that chose the guy that assaulted me. I can't control that. He
No.
chose to do that, and I don't have to own that. And so for me, that was a huge moment for me, a pivotal moment. I was like, you know what? I don't have to own that behavior. I don't have to. Being assaulted is not a definition of who I am. And I don't have to like own that label. We label ourselves in this life. Everything has a label, right? But being able to kind of disassociate from that label and being like, okay, that happened and it was horrible. And yes, it was traumatic and everything else that goes along with it. But I get to move forward. I get to be happy. I get to be joyful. I choose to be the person I am every single day.
Yeah.
And so that's how I was able to let go of that. That's why this work is it's phenomenal, because I love being able to see that in my clients. And I mean, you can use it for anything. You can use it to stop smoking, for weight loss, for whatever kind of financial goal. Like you're a CEO of X, whatever company, and you want to make $1 million in sales. You set that goal and use coaching and NLP. I mean, there's a reason why life coaching is so big right now, because it has such a huge, amazing effect on your life.
Yeah. So I would like to say that I am so thankful of your service, and I
Thank you.
appreciate everything you've done. I appreciate you being here as a guest tonight after I know you had a chaotic day.
No worries.
But
Thank you so much.
I would like to also say hi to Ben Bruce, who is watching us from Nigeria, Africa. And then we have my dad, who is watching from across the street right now. And then we have Nita Bashir, who's watching from Oklahoma. Greg Dillon, who is watching from Indianapolis, Indiana, I believe, and Dr. Robin Lococo and Aaron Asbury. Sorry, about forgot that one, about missed it. So we thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. And oh, Sergi Salazar is here too. So can't forget him. He's cool.
Yes, thank you all for coming and watching, and thank you, Jeff, for hosting us and for having me on. I'm super honored to be a guest.
Not a problem. So, Meghann, is there some way that people can reach out to you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yes, thank you for asking. I know, I'm like, I should have sent over my bio stuff to you to have. I have all kind. You can look me up on Facebook. It's all pretty much the same: Facebook, Instagram. Meghann Trapp. Meghann Trapp Coaching is my business profile page for Facebook. My website is also meghantrappcoaching.com. I don't know if I'm assuming you're going to tag me in this. They can just click on my personal profile, and it has all my LinkedIn, my IG handle, my Twitter, all of that stuff, and then my personal website too, my email. So yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear from people. I'd love to, connect and help anyone that is looking for it.
Awesome. And I just have to ask one more time because I don't really remember. But how old did you say the baby is?
She turned 4 weeks yesterday. So she's just a month old. Yep.
That's cool.
Thank you. Yes, this is my coolest chapter yet to be a mom. So
I hope she is better. I mean, you said that her fever dropped earlier, and I hope it remains low.
Thank you. Yeah, she's doing better. She's resting. So.
Oh, I just saw her face for a minute. I feel all honored now. All right.
I know.
So I need everybody out there, including you, Meghann, to do me a favor. This week, next week, and for the rest of your life, I need you to make every second count. Why? Because you never know when the seconds are going to run out on your one life. Guys, please remember to share this video out. Invite all kinds of people to watch this video because you never know who it can help. But I also want to thank you guys for watching and being loyal viewers of this show. And I'll talk to you in just a minute, Meghann, but I'm putting you in the back room.
Okay. All right? Thank you so much for having us.
Not a problem. Thank you. So, guys, thank you so much again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next week.